Shut up and sit down.
Hello, I'm Arkatsuke. Today I'm talking about a story circulating through the webs about a British straight male Marine who was forced by his superior officers to shave his body hair and masturbate to gay porn in front of his company as part of a punishment for failing some sort of test, therefore getting the unit into trouble. Now, I'll admit that on the surface this thing sounds a lot like a porno. A good one. Welcome to the corridors of my mind. But that this, at least purportedly, actually happened is horrifying. The unnamed Marine has testified he now has post-traumatic stress disorder after undergoing the ordeal in front of as many as 43 other commandos. The last one to ejaculate, by the way, would be further punished, possibly by hanging upside down from a pull-up bar and being whipped. According to the Current Affairs YouTube channel, which is the only other channel I found that is actually talking about this, soldiers could be punished for basically anything, and the unit had a self-formed kangaroo court called Family Time, where soldiers would determine their punishment in a game show-like format where punishments were drawn out of a box. It's also worth mentioning that the officers implicated in setting up and conceiving punishments, often in competition with each other to be more cruel, were acquitted by a panel of senior officers following a week-long court-martial at Portsmouth Naval Base. It's unclear whether this decision was reached because of insufficient evidence or whatever, possibly even related to being popular with upper management, which does happen in the military. Only that when the court heard that the punishments were actually decided by Marines in the troop, and that Corporal Foster, the beefy CEO in charge and pictured here, insisted he would steer clear of what the men decided. Not all the accounts line up, so we are unlikely to ever really know what happened. I personally find this entire series of events disturbing, and if this really happened, my heart goes out to this Marine. However, I'm actually more disturbed by the relative lack of coverage or attention such a bizarre and cruel spectacle has received, and even worse yet are the comments. Now, before anyone tells me that the internet is cruel and you shouldn't listen or take them seriously, I hear you. But bear with me for a minute. We are presently in the midst of a cyclone of sexual harassment #MeToo hand-wringing. Listen and Believe is everywhere, and we see a lot of outrage all over the internet, Hollywood, and even now creeping into government and business for complaints that are comparatively minor and that happened decades ago. Where is the listen and believe, the Me Toos for men when they're harassed? I'm not even necessarily talking about this Marine or these specific events. This story with the Marine, to me, is the most current incarnation I can think of for the general disregard for male suffering. I recently spoke to my best friend about this story, which he had already read about on his own. My friend is former military, and though he did not describe himself as an expert, he, as someone with real experience, was able to tell me that these type of things do in fact happen. It's unfair to say they happen often, but this is not sensationalized. He has heard of things like this before. Worse yet, he has told me that truthfully, this was only about an 8 out of 10 on the scale of horrific things he's heard about. Again, though not extremely common, sexual assault amongst military members, male or female, hetero or homosexual, is not unheard of. The truth is, men are just as likely to be assaulted as women, particularly when you include prison statistics. But unlike women, they have little to no support, no hashtags, no sympathy, just shame, fear of ridicule, and the need to hide, deny, and move on. Sexual assault against anyone is wrong, and I'm not saying that it's any worse for men, only that they don't have nearly as many people or resources to help them afterwards. We are told all the time that the majority of sexual assaults go unreported. And I imagine that is especially true for men, and I'd say even more so than for women, because there is no safe space and very little cultural machinery for men generally to discuss when they've been raped or sexually assaulted. As a victim of sexual abuse myself, I can tell you that those scars never go away, and you're very lucky if you have someone to discuss it with to help you heal. A lot of the comments that I have read circle around the idea that it either wasn't that bad or they obviously weren't forced. Now imagine that soldier in question was a woman who had been threatened by her superior male officer with a whipping if she didn't masturbate to porn that went against her sexual interests. Oh, sweet intersectional Jesus. The entire base would be purged, laws would be passed, celebrities would gather in front of white backgrounds with sad music and cry in black and white, while Crayola-haired non-binaries set their armpits on fire, demanding all men castrate themselves. But it didn't. It happened to a straight man, probably a white one. Few people care that he feels degraded. At least here in the US, it's barely a blip, and mostly a source of gay gallows humor. Now for the gay guys that are masturbating to the idea, I agree that if this was a pornographic performance, yes, it would be very hot. Sean Cody himself would bend over backwards to film it. But this is real. I tried to describe this to my husband, who initially did not necessarily see what the big deal was, so I put it in gay terms. Imagine being taken by a company of women, forced to strip naked, shave your body hair, and then masturbate to lesbian porn, all the while they laugh at you, knowing that they will physically assault you if you do not comply. Shame is powerful, fear is powerful, and the need to comply to strong group pressure is very difficult to ignore, particularly if your income and the body of laws that you serve compel you to obey or face drastic consequences, not just limited to potentially losing everything, but even going to prison if you do not follow the rules. I do not pretend to understand what it's like to be a Marine, to serve and protect the various nations that we live in. I have nothing but respect for the people that endure this hard and extremely dangerous lifestyle for our protection. I will admit that I have been rather cynical about some, not all, but some of the Me Too phenomena that we see all over the internet. I wouldn't put it above certain feminist groups to be using this as a McCarthyistic takeover. That said, however, having spoken to a different friend of mine, a woman who works in the tech sector, and hearing about her experiences, the way she's been treated, and the horror that she and many of her female friends have had to endure, it gives me pause. I still maintain that the listen and believe philosophy is essentially fascistic. However, I believe that this is a sign of society's double standards that we wouldn't even have any particular outrage or sympathy for victims of male assault, whether they be in the military, prison rape, or even victims of domestic abuse. If you want to explore the subject more in depth, I would sincerely recommend that you watch Cassie J's The Red Pill documentary. Also check out Christina Hoff Sommers in The Factual Feminist. Both of these women are strong feminists in their own right, but present common sense and empathy about many of these topics in more depth with greater eloquence than I believe I could. I want to leave this with the thought that we always need to be careful about getting wrapped up in hysteria and only make our decisions according to evidence. We also need to make sure that the standards that which we have for one gender are equally enforced for the other. Trauma is trauma, whether you have a penis or a vagina. Finally, I want to address toxic masculinity. It doesn't exist. It is an intellectually and emotionally dishonest argument that it's patriarchy that keeps men from discussing trauma. It's male disposability. Think Titanic and women and children first. Men are, and probably will always be, the main protectors of our society. There will always be many brave women to do the same, but when the price of life is blood, it overwhelmingly flows from male veins. This is unlikely to change, so the least we can do is give these brave soldiers, policemen, firemen, and other first responders our respect. Calling masculinity, the source of their strength that we all depend on, toxic, is a slap in their faces. Stop it! I'm Our Cat's Gay. Like, subscribe, love it, hate it. You already watched it. You can't unwatch it. Thanks for watching.